His opponent, Josh McCall, is a candidate for Congress in the 9th Congressional District. He's an educator and a progressive Christian. Josh, I think a lot of folks have had a chance to meet Josh. He's been out on the campaign trail for, what, 4 or 5 years?
Dog years.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Great to see you guys today. Thank you all for coming out. Thank you, Dave, for that speech. You did a great job. It's an honor to be up here on this stage with good people who care about everybody in our nation, not just the ones who line their pockets. So I want to come to you today to talk to you a little bit about actually winning in this district. That's what everybody always asks me. How in the world are you going to win this thing? And it's a good question. So I'll tell you how I'm going to win it. But I got to tell you first a little story from my childhood. I'm from Martin, Georgia. Has anybody ever stopped in Martin, Georgia? Has anybody ever passed through Martin, Georgia? Yeah, you pass through it through Stevens County on the way to Franklin County, probably over the interstate. There's a caution light. And that's it. It's a caution light. That's where I grew up, right here in the 9th District. I was born in Demorest, and my parents have always lived in the same 15-mile radius up there around the border between Stevens and Franklin County. And the land that I grew up on had been in my family for generations. We called it the old place. And back behind our house on the old place, my dad, who drove 100 miles and back, 100 miles to Marietta to Lockheed Martin, and 100 miles back from Lockheed Martin, and I'll tell you about that in a little bit. I could never figure this out when I was little, but he would take his weekends and his vacations and farm. He'd be out there sweating bullets and in the middle of the Georgia summer on his vacation. But one summer, he had to work a little extra overtime to make ends meet, and he had planted this beautiful field of green beans. And you know, I had heard my parents say it before, but I was in the middle. I was the only one. My brothers were working, and my dad was working. And so I was the only one that summer who could actually pick the green beans, and it was time to pick them. We knew it was about to rain, and it was the last chance we were going to have to pick. And I was sitting in the middle of one of those rows, and suddenly it dawned on me the meaning of the statement, "You've got a long row to hoe." I had heard it, you know, it's kind of things that you hear, but you don't really know what it means. And I was sitting in the middle of one of these long rows of green beans, and I thought, I know what a long row to hoe means, and I know that we've got a long row to hoe right here in the 9th District, and it's going to be hard work. And I think I've demonstrated over the course of my campaign, I'm not the smartest person in this district. I'm not the best person under this shelter today, but I do know how to work because my mom and dad taught me how to do that growing up right here in the 9th District. My mama worked up in Milliken, up at Milliken on Currahee Mountain in Toccoa, Georgia, and she worked swing shift. In fact, one of my earliest memories was my mom carrying me through the front door of the trailer where I grew up my first 4 years. She was carrying me to get me to daycare so that she could work swing shift at Milliken Humphrey as a textile worker. And even back then, you know, as a child, I knew that she didn't just go into work like working people. They don't go into work always because they like to. If you're working in a textile factory, you're going to work for other people. You're going to work for your children and your family. And that's why my mom woke up and did that every day. And my father, now in my area, we call our father Daddy. It's the only I've never heard it outside of this district, but we refer to our fathers as Daddy, where I'm from. And so my daddy, the reason he drove 100 miles to Marietta and 100 miles back was because there was no place around there for machinists who offered health care that we could afford. And my mother had taken some medicine while she was pregnant with me that gave me very bad teeth. So as soon as my teeth would come in, I had abscesses. I had a lot of bad teeth when I was young. And I still remember the pain that I was in as a child, going to the dentist and dreading the dentist. But he had to do that so that he could afford a dentist for me. So that's where I learned how to care about other people, is right here in the 9th District. My parents didn't do any of that for themselves. Being a machinist at Lockheed Martin is stressful. You're building airplanes, and you have to be exact and precise. My mother worked in a very hot textile factory every day, not because it was fun. I love my job. I teach Latin. Sometimes I look up at my desk and my kids are doing their grammar, and I think, do I get paid for this? Because my parents knew what hard work was. My first job here in the 9th District was from 2 brick and block masons. And I thought I knew what work was. I thought I knew what it was. But one summer, I was 15, and I woke up, and my dad woke me up. It was at 9 o'clock. You know, when you're a young teenage boy, you can sleep all day, and you never wake up. I don't know how they do it. But I woke up one morning, and there was the man standing out front with this long white beard with tobacco stains all down it. He said, "Josh, this is Clarence Williams." Clarence was 70 years old, and he was still laying brick and block. And I thought, I'm sure I can keep up with this guy. I was 15, I worked out. And that first day, my mama had bought me a set of gloves so I could carry the brick and block. We were doing block at that point. They were building a foundation. And I could not keep up with that 70-year-old man. He was laying them as soon as I could put them down. And I learned that summer what hard work is. I know how to work hard. And I know the people of this district. In fact, not only do I know the people of this district, my wife was also born here in Toccoa, Georgia. Her family came here as refugees from Vietnam. And one day her mother was looking for her father because he didn't come home back in Vietnam. Her father had been training as a helicopter pilot for the American side. And her mother didn't know where he was, went looking for him around town, and she was told that the re-education police had picked up her father. And as soon as they got out, they did what every refugee family does. They wanted to find safety. And back then, as hard as it is to say this, back then in our country, we knew what to do with refugees. We knew that we were a city on a hill, and I am so thankful that my country welcomed my parents-in-law, some of the hardest working people I've ever met in my life. Her mother is a seamstress. Her father worked in a factory in Habersham County. Very hard-working family. And they have made America better because of their presence. They have certainly blessed my life because my wife is the best person I know and the smartest person I know. You know, I'm going to get to my policies in just a second, but let me tell you some of the ideas behind my policies. Have you guys ever read the different versions of the Bible? You know, if you look at them up online, there's the Bible, KJV, NIV. And I was looking this week as our president celebrated the National Day of Prayer on the same day that his story about his Stormy Daniels payoff also came out. And I thought, which version of the Bible are they reading? And so I tried to look up the Bible GOP, and I couldn't find it, but I think I understand it. So I went and read, I don't know if y'all have ever heard of that famous miracle where Jesus and his disciples feed a multitude with just a few fish and a few loaves of bread, and it never runs out, right? And I thought, what would the GOP version of that miracle look like? And I believe it goes something like this. You know what does it say?
2 minutes.
2 minutes, oh, excuse me. 2 minutes. I think they would have said, let all these losers go hungry. It's their fault they're hungry. But I believe that the blessings of America are not diminished when they're shared. In fact, they are as abundant as our need and as plentiful as our willingness to work together, just like that miracle on the side of that hill with those multitudes. Join me. May 22nd, we need your vote because my opponent is a good man. He is an intelligent man, but you may know that he has recently moved here from California about 2 years ago. I have lived here my whole life, and for a Republican to put their vote next to a Democrat takes more than a message. It takes relationships and networks. I've worked with them. I've treated them with decency and respect. I've taught their children. I've worked for them. And I'm going to earn their vote through trust and actual relationships with people in this district. I know this area. I have the accent. I teach Sunday school across town at First Baptist Church every Sunday. So I speak the language of faith that so many people speak here. But my number one priority, this is why I'm running. My daddy drove 100 miles, 200 miles a day to get me health care. And I believe today that nobody should die because they're poor, and nobody should be poor because they're dying. That's my conviction. I don't care if it's a Republican or a Democrat up there in Congress that tells me no. I will stand up for principles. I'm not running for a party. I'm running on principles, and I'm running for justice. And whether injustice wears an orange mask or a smarter looking mask like Chuck Schumer, I'm going to stand up to injustice wherever I find it, in the Democratic Party or in the Republican Party. Thank y'all for your attention. Questions? Are there any questions?
Come on, Josh. You don't tell me they've asked you all the questions they can ask you. I'm sure you've answered a question or two.
I probably have.
Yeah? What's the best question you've ever gotten?
The best question I've ever gotten are the Republicans I've met, why should I vote for you? That's a great question. I did. I told them that you should vote for me because I take that commandment, love your neighbor as yourself, seriously. And that means if I want health care and prosperity and education for my household, I must also work for health care, prosperity, and education for my neighbors. And I take that seriously whether you're a Republican or Democrat, independent. I take it seriously.